Have you ever stood under a truly dark sky, far from the glare of civilization, and felt the profound, crushing silence of the cosmos? It's a silence that speaks volumes. It tells us we are on a solitary vessel, a single sphere of blue and white, adrift in an endless, indifferent ocean of black. Our science reinforces this story. We are told that we inhabit a rock, a complex, beautiful, and rare geological machine. Yes, but a machine nonetheless. A chance combination of elements and energy that sparked life, which then evolved through a series of magnificent, but ultimately random accidents. This planet, our Earth, is presented to us as a passive stage upon which the drama of life unfolds. It is the setting, not a character. It is the house, not a member of the family. But what if this fundamental assumption, the very bedrock of our modern worldview, is not just wrong, but dangerously incomplete? What if the story we've been telling ourselves about our home is the greatest misunderstanding in human history? This is not just a philosophical question. It is an investigation into the possibility that our planet is not a passive rock, but an active, intelligent, and communicative entity. And more chillingly, that it has been trying to send us a message that has been lost, ignored, and forgotten. Today, we begin the search for 3 of these lost messages, in a desperate attempt to understand a cosmic warning that may determine the future of our species. The idea that Earth is a single living superorganism is not new. Ancient cultures across the globe felt this intuitively. They didn't see a world of resources to be exploited. They saw a world of relationships to be honored. They spoke of the Earth Mother, of Pachamama, of Gaia. To them, the rivers were the planet's veins, the soil its skin, the winds its breath. This was not poetry. It was perceived reality. In the 20th century, this ancient intuition was given a modern scientific name, the Gaia hypothesis, proposed by scientist James Lovelock. He observed that the conditions on Earth, the temperature, the chemical composition of the atmosphere, the salinity of the oceans, are regulated and maintained within a narrow band that is perfect for life. It's as if the planet itself has a form of homeostasis, much like our own bodies regulate their temperature and chemistry. Life, Lovelock argued, does not simply adapt to a passive Earth. Life actively and collectively shapes the Earth to create the conditions it needs to thrive. The planet's living and non-living parts form a complex, interconnected system, a self-regulating entity. But our investigation today pushes this revolutionary idea one terrifying step further. If the Earth is a self-regulating system, does it have a form of consciousness? Does a planetary-scale mind emerge from the staggering complexity of its interconnected ecosystems? And if it does possess such a mind, does it try to communicate? Not in human language, of course. Not with words and sentences, but in a language far older, a language of cycles, of patterns, of whispers written in stone, in flesh, and in the silent dance of the stars. This is where our journey as cosmic detectives truly begins, because we believe the evidence of this communication is all around us, hidden in plain sight. We are searching for 3 distinct categories of messages, 3 channels of communication that have been broadcasting for millennia. The first is a message written in stone and magnetism. It's a geological message. Our ancestors, the builders of the great megalithic sites like Stonehenge and Karnak, seem to be obsessed with marking specific points on the Earth's surface. They erected massive stones, aligned them with celestial events, and built chambers that resonated at specific frequencies. The modern view dismisses these as primitive temples or crude calendars. But what if they were something more? What if these ancient engineers were not just worshiping the sky, but were listening to the Earth? What if they understood that the planet has a subtle energy grid, lines of telluric current and magnetic force, and that by placing these structures at specific nodes, they were building planetary-scale acupuncture needles? Or perhaps cosmic-scale radio antennas designed not to transmit, but to receive the slow, deep hum of the planetary mind. This first message, we propose, is an instruction manual for how to listen to the Earth itself. A key to a forgotten technology based on resonance and alignment, left behind by those who still knew how to hear the planet's heartbeat. The second lost message is biological. It is written not in stone, but in our very DNA, and echoed in the oldest myths and legends of our species. Consider the universal symbols that recur in cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia of time. The symbol of the world serpent or the dragon, often depicted as encircling the globe. In ancient mythologies, this serpent was not a creature of chaos, but the embodiment of the Earth's own creative and destructive power. The Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, is a symbol of the planet's great, self-sustaining cycles. The world tree, the axis mundi, its roots deep in the underworld and its branches holding up the heavens, is another universal map of reality. Are these mere psychological archetypes, as Carl Jung might suggest, or are they fragmented memories of a biological truth, a kind of species-level memory passed down through generations that reminds us we are not separate from this planet, but are an extension of it? That our consciousness is a fractal of a much larger planetary consciousness. This message suggests that the answers are not just outside of us, but inside. That certain myths, certain sacred plants used by shamans for millennia, are not just tools for hallucination, but are keys designed to unlock dormant parts of our own minds, allowing us to temporarily reconnect with the planetary intelligence from which we have become tragically disconnected. This second message is an echo in our own blood, a call to remember what we are. The third and final message is the most elusive and the most critical. It is the celestial key that unlocks the other two. This message is written in the language of cosmic cycles and catastrophic events. Our ancestors were not just farmers looking at the sky for planting seasons. They were meticulous observers, chroniclers of the heavens, because they understood a terrifying truth. What happens up there directly affects what happens down here. They recorded the appearance of comets, the explosion of supernova, the slow, ponderous wobble of the Earth on its axis, known as the precession of equinoxes. They built entire civilizations, like the ancient Egyptians, around aligning their most sacred structures with these cosmic cycles. Why such an obsession? The conventional answer is religion and mythology. But what if it was something far more practical? What if they had observed a direct correlation between specific celestial events and responses from the Earth? A kind of call and response between the planet and the wider cosmos. Perhaps a close pass by a comet could trigger seismic or volcanic activity through electromagnetic interaction. Perhaps periods of intense solar activity could influence not just the climate, but the very field of consciousness on the planet. This third message is the ultimate warning. It suggests that the Earth is not a closed system. It is part of a galactic conversation, and it responds to celestial triggers. The message encoded in the stars is a timetable, a list of appointments that our planet has with the rest of the cosmos. And by ignoring these celestial cycles, we are failing to prepare for the Earth's predictable and perhaps violent reactions. We are flying blind. So here is our mission: to rediscover the grammar of this lost language, to learn how to read the geological message in the stones, to hear the biological message in our myths, and to understand the celestial message in the stars. We are proposing a radical shift in perspective, to see the Earth not as a backdrop for human history, but as the central protagonist, a being with a memory, a purpose, and a voice. The clues are scattered. They lie dormant in the forgotten knowledge of ancient traditions, in the precise alignments of megalithic ruins, and in the recurring patterns of global myths. This is not a search for aliens or for gods from other worlds. It is a search for a far more intimate and profound intelligence that has been our constant companion, our creator, our cradle, and our silent witness since the dawn of our species. The stakes could not be higher. For if the Earth is indeed sending a warning, if the convergence of ecological crises, social instability, and climatic changes are not random chaos, but the symptoms of a planetary system in distress, then failing to understand these messages is not just an academic oversight. It is an act of self-destruction. The investigation begins now. We must peel back the layers of history, decipher the codes left by our ancestors, and ask the question that will define our future. What has our living planet been trying to tell us? And have we woken up in time to listen? Before we examine the evidence, the colossal stones, the recurring myths, the celestial alignments, we must first perform an act of mental time travel. We must shed the skin of our modern reality and attempt to inhabit the consciousness of the ancient world. This is perhaps the most difficult step in our entire investigation, because the gap between their world and ours is not merely one of technology, but of perception itself. We, the children of the 21st century, live in a world of abstractions. We live in climate-controlled boxes, illuminated by artificial suns. Our food comes from glowing screens and sanitized packages. The water flows from metal taps. Its journey from the clouds, a distant, forgotten story. We are, in essence, profoundly disconnected from the very planetary systems that sustain us. Our worldview is built upon this separation. We see nature as something out there, a park to visit, a resource to be managed, a beautiful backdrop for our human drama. But for our ancestors, there was no out there. There was only here. Their reality was not an abstraction. It was a visceral, immediate, and all-encompassing sensory experience. They did not simply look at the world, they were immersed in it. They could smell the approach of rain on the wind hours before it arrived. They could read the health of a forest and the texture of its moss. They could feel the subtle vibrations of the earth beneath their feet and know what it meant. Their existence was a constant high-stakes dialogue with a living, breathing, and often terrifying environment. This is the mind we must seek to understand, a mind not separated from nature, but woven inextricably into its fabric. The primary driver of this ancient consciousness was survival. Their fears were not the abstract anxieties of our modern age. They were immediate, tangible, and existential. The fear of the endless winter, of the rains that would not come, of the herds that would not return, of the blight that would consume the harvest. The fear of the dark and what it held. The hope, in turn, was for balance, for predictability, for the assurance that the sun would rise again, that the seasons would turn in their proper order, that the great cycle of life, death, and rebirth would continue. Their lives were lived on a knife's edge, and their survival depended entirely on their ability to perceive patterns. They were the original data scientists, and their laboratory was the entire world. For thousands of generations, they gathered data. They watched the migration of birds, the flowering of plants, the spawning of fish. They noted the subtle shifts in the wind, the taste of the water, the behavior of animals before an earthquake. This was not idle observation. It was a matter of life and death, and most importantly, they looked up. In a world without artificial light, the night sky was not a distant, dotted canvas. It was a living, shimmering, overwhelming presence. A second landscape teeming with characters, stories, and most crucially, cycles. They saw that the phases of the moon were tied to the tides and to the cycles of fertility in both animals and humans. They saw that the position of certain constellations on the horizon at sunrise predicted the coming of the seasons with unfailing accuracy. The sky was not a separate realm. It was the master clock, the great celestial gear that drove the machinery of life on Earth. This deep, pattern-seeking observation led them to a worldview that is almost alien to us now: animism. We tend to dismiss animism as a primitive superstition, the naive belief that everything has a spirit. But this is a profound misunderstanding. Animism was not a belief system. It was a functional conclusion based on overwhelming data. When you observe for millennia that the river's behavior affects the crops, that the mountain's mood affects the weather, and that the forest's health affects the hunt, you don't conclude that these are dead, mechanical systems. You conclude that they are alive, that they have agency, that they are characters in the cosmic drama just as you are. You develop a relationship with them. You learn their language, their moods, their habits. You understand that your survival depends not on dominating them, but on maintaining a state of balance and respect with them. This is the crucial point. For the animistic mind, the world was a community of subjects, not a collection of objects. A mountain was not a pile of rock. It was a presence. A river was not a body of water. It was a lifeblood. The earth itself was not a planet. It was the Great Mother. This perspective automatically fosters a sense of profound connection and responsibility. It also opens the mind to the possibility of communication. If the world around you is alive and intelligent, then it is not only possible but expected that it would communicate. The key was simply learning how to listen. This, then, is the terrestrial context. We are talking about cultures whose very existence was predicated on a deep, symbiotic relationship with their environment. Their hopes were for stability. Their fears were of chaos and cosmic imbalance. They saw themselves not as masters of the earth, but as its children, utterly dependent on its health and goodwill. This psychological and spiritual framework is the fertile ground from which our three messages emerged. It explains why they would dedicate centuries of immense labor to building the structures we will soon investigate. They weren't building tombs for egotistical kings or mere temples for abstract gods. They were engaged in a planetary-scale project of cosmic maintenance. They were building instruments designed to stabilize the Earth, to harmonize its energies, to ensure the continuation of the great cycles upon which all life depended. They were practicing a form of preventative medicine on a planetary scale. The first message, the one written in stone, was their attempt to engage with the planet's geological and magnetic body. They found the planet's nervous system, its energy meridians, what some call ley lines, and they built their sacred sites upon these nodes as a way to listen to, and perhaps even influence, the deep, slow voice of the Earth. It was the ultimate act of communication with the terrestrial mind. Simultaneously, they encoded their vast repository of ecological and cyclical knowledge into the second message, the one written in myth and flesh. The stories of dying and resurrecting gods, of world-circling serpents, of cosmic trees, were not just fanciful tales. They were complex data storage systems. They were mnemonics, allegories that contained critical information about the turning of the seasons, a precession of the equinoxes, the cycles of drought and flood, and humanity's proper role within these great cosmic dramas. These myths were the software of their civilization, teaching each generation the fundamental truth. You are part of a living system, and your actions have consequences for the whole. The myths were a constant reminder that their individual lives were intertwined with the life of the planet itself. They were the echoes of the Earth's voice, translated into a language that the human soul could understand. We have now established the profile of our ancient detectives. They were not primitive savages. They were master observers, pragmatic survivalists, and deeply spiritual beings who perceived a living intelligence in the world around them. Their entire civilization was a response to this perception. They were driven by the most powerful of all human instincts, the desire to create a stable and predictable world for their children. Having established who they were and why they were listening, we are now ready to examine the first and perhaps most tangible of the three lost messages they left behind for us to find. We are ready to listen to the stones. Having steeped ourselves in the mindset of the ancient world, we must now turn our gaze upwards to the source of their greatest awe and their most profound knowledge. We must attempt to see the sky as they saw it. To do this requires another act of imagination, a cleansing of our modern perceptions. Our sky today is a pale, washed-out ghost of what it once was. Drowned in the electric haze of our cities, it appears as a flat, two-dimensional dome with a few lonely points of light. But the ancient sky, the sky of our ancestors, was a spectacle of overwhelming depth and grandeur. Imagine a blackness so pure it felt tangible, a velvet abyss against which the stars did not just twinkle, they blazed. The Milky Way was not a faint, cloudy band. It was the spine of night, a textured, churning river of light so bright it cast soft shadows on the ground. It was a celestial ocean, and the earth felt like a ship sailing upon it. This sky was not silent. It was alive. It was a three-dimensional landscape of staggering complexity, a source of constant information, a divine book written in a language of light, darkness, and inexorable motion. To them, looking at the sky was not a pastime. It was an act of reading the mind of God, of tracking the gears of the cosmos. And within this grand celestial machine, they identified specific patterns, rhythms, and events, the clues that we now recognize as the celestial components of our three lost messages. The most fundamental clues were the two great luminaries, the anchors of all life, the sun and the moon. They were the two hands of the cosmic clock. The sun was the giver of life, its daily journey from east to west, the most basic rhythm of existence. But its true importance was revealed in its annual journey along the horizon. Our ancestors were obsessive observers of the solstices and equinoxes. These were not mere dates on a calendar. They were the four great turning points of the year, the moments when the earth itself seemed to take a breath. The winter solstice was the moment of greatest fear and hope, the day the sun died at its lowest point on the horizon, only to be miraculously reborn and begin its slow climb back to power. The summer solstice was its triumphant peak, a celebration of light and life at its zenith. The equinoxes were the points of perfect balance between light and darkness. These 4 points defined a sacred geometry upon the land, and as we will see, our ancestors built their most monumental structures to capture and amplify the power of these moments. They were pinning down the rhythm of the solar heartbeat, creating a framework of stability in a chaotic world. The moon, in turn, was the mistress of the night, the regulator of the tides, and the keeper of the shorter, more intimate cycles of life. Its 29.5-day dance of waxing and waning was the first metronome, a predictable rhythm that governed fertility, planting, and sacred rituals. It was the feminine counterpart to the sun's masculine power, a celestial embodiment of the cycle of birth, death, and regeneration. Together, the sun and moon provided the foundational grammar of the celestial language, a predictable rhythm against which all other, more mysterious events could be measured. But beyond these familiar cycles, our ancestors were aware of a motion so vast and slow that it is almost beyond our modern comprehension. This is perhaps the most important celestial clue of all, the master key to their long-term vision of time. We are talking about the precession of the equinoxes. To understand this, we need an analogy. Imagine the Earth is like a spinning top. As it spins rapidly on its axis, creating day and night, it also has a slow secondary wobble. This wobble is incredibly slow, causing the Earth's axis to trace a great circle in the sky over a period of nearly 26,000 years. This is what we call the Great Year. Why is this important? Because this wobble has 2 profound effects. First, it changes our view of the fixed stars. The star that marks the celestial North Pole changes over millennia. Today, we have Polaris. But when the Great Pyramids of Egypt were being built, the pole star was Thuban, a star in the constellation Draco. This fact alone proves that the pyramid builders were aware of this grand cycle. But the second effect is even more significant. As the Earth wobbles, the position of the sun against the background of the zodiac constellations on the day of the vernal equinox, the first day of spring, slowly shifts backward. It takes roughly 2,160 years for the sun to move through one zodiacal constellation on the day of the equinox. This is a world age. The meticulous records and mythologies of cultures like the ancient Egyptians, Sumerians, and Vedic Indians strongly suggest they knew this. They saw human history unfold not in centuries, but in these world ages. The age of Taurus, marked by bull worship. The age of Aries, marked by the rail. The age of Pisces, the fish, which corresponds with the Christian era. And our current transition into the age of Aquarius. This is a staggering concept. It means they were not just thinking about their own lifetimes, or even their own civilization. They were mapping human destiny against a 26,000-year celestial cycle. They were thinking on a planetary timescale. The precession was the master clock, the ultimate timetable, and its slow, inexorable turning was a message in itself, a prophecy of great changes and world-altering transformations written across eons. If the cycles of the sun, moon, and precession were the predictable grammar of the sky, then there were other events that served as its sudden, terrifying punctuation: comets, meteors, and exploding stars. These were the transient messengers, the unpredictable omens that broke the celestial order. Imagine the psychological impact of a great comet appearing in the pristine night sky, a luminous, ghostly sword hanging in the heavens for weeks on end. It would have been seen as a potent and world-altering sign, a message from the cosmos directed at them. Cultures around the globe meticulously recorded these events, and their appearance was almost always linked to great upheaval on Earth: the death of kings, the outbreak of plague, the fall of empires, or the occurrence of catastrophic floods and earthquakes. Were these mere superstitions? Or had they observed, over thousands of years, a genuine correlation? Was there a physical mechanism, perhaps electromagnetic, that connected these celestial visitors to terrestrial instability? Similarly, meteor showers were not seen as random debris burning in the atmosphere. They were moments when the veil between the worlds grew thin, when the stuff of the heavens rained down upon the earth. Sacred stones in many cultures, like the black stone of the Kaaba in Mecca, are believed to be meteorites, literally, gifts from the gods. Finally, and most dramatically, there was the appearance of a supernova, a star exploding with the light of 1 billion suns, creating a new, impossibly bright star that would shine for weeks or months, even during the day. Ancient petroglyphs, like the one at Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, appeared to record the supernova of 1054 AD, which created the Crab Nebula. Such an event would be an undeniable sign, a cosmic announcement of immense significance. These transient events formed the third set of celestial clues. They were the wild cards, the real-time warnings, the shouts that punctuated the slow whispers of the great cycles. They were the evidence that the cosmos was not a perfect clockwork machine, but a dynamic, sometimes violent place, and that Earth was an active participant in its drama. We have now recreated the ancient sky and identified its key components: the short-term rhythms of the sun and moon, the epic, long-wave cycle of precession, and the sudden, disruptive messages of comets and supernova. We have assembled the celestial alphabet. The next step in our investigation is the moment of revelation, the moment we bring these celestial clues back down to Earth. For millennia, we have treated the great ruins of the ancient world and the celestial canopy above as two separate fields of study. We have sent archaeologists to dig in the dirt and astronomers to gaze at the stars, each group speaking a different language, each seeking answers in their own isolated domain. This separation is the great mistake, the blind spot that has kept the deepest secrets of our past hidden from view. The moment we tear down the wall between these disciplines is the moment the code is broken. It is the moment we realize we are not looking at two different phenomena, but at a single unified system of breathtaking elegance and terrifying implication. This is the eureka moment of our investigation. The terrestrial context and the celestial clues are not parallel stories. They are a lock and a key. The hopes and fears of ancient peoples, their intimate connection to a living Earth, was the lock. The predictable cycles and sudden warnings in the sky were the key. When you bring them together, the tumblers fall into place and the message becomes clear. The central thesis of our investigation is this: ancient cultures perceived the Earth and the cosmos as a single, resonant organism, and they developed a sophisticated technology based on astronomy, geology, and mythology to interact with and stabilize this system for the continuation of life. The three lost messages are not independent broadcasts. They are three harmonics of a single planetary truth, a truth that functions as a cosmic warning. Let us first decipher the message in stone by connecting it to the celestial clock. Why would a culture dedicate centuries of labor, moving millions of tons of rock with primitive tools, simply to mark the day the sun stands still at the winter solstice. The calendar theory is laughably inadequate to explain the sheer scale and precision of sites like Newgrange in Ireland or Stonehenge in England. The connection is far deeper. These were not passive calendars. They were active instruments. Think of a tuning fork. When you strike it, it vibrates at a specific frequency, and it can cause another tuning fork of the same frequency to vibrate in sympathy, even at a distance. Our ancestors saw the cosmos in these terms. They believed that at the precise moments of the solstices and equinoxes, the sun was broadcasting a specific frequency, a unique quality of energy that was vital for the health of the earth. The megalithic structures were the tuning forks. They were built with immense precision, often using quartz-rich stone, and placed on specific nodes of the Earth's own energy grid, the so-called ley lines, to receive this celestial energy and anchor it into the terrestrial sphere. The famous passage at Newgrange, which allows a single beam of winter solstice sunlight to penetrate a long tunnel and illuminate a central chamber, was not just a symbol of the sun's rebirth. It was a technological process designed to capture that potent, life-renewing solar frequency and inject it directly into the body of the Earth, like a form of planetary acupuncture, revitalizing the land for the coming year. This connection becomes even more profound when we apply the master clock of precession. The alignments of many ancient sites, most famously the Giza Pyramid Complex, do not just point to the sun and moon. They point to specific stars and constellations, mapping the celestial sphere onto the ground. The Orion correlation theory, for example, posits that the layout of the three Great Pyramids is a perfect mirror of the three stars in Orion's belt. But crucially, the alignment is not perfect for the era in which the pyramids were supposedly built. It is, however, a perfect match for the sky as it appeared around 10,500 BC, a time that coincides with the end of the last ice age and the dawn of the previous precessional age of Leo. This is a staggering claim. It suggests that the builders were not just commemorating their own time, but were encoding a specific vast moment in the great year. They were building a monument not to a king, but to a moment in cosmic time itself. This is the true purpose of the first message. The global network of megalithic sites forms a planetary scale instrument, a circuit board of stone and earth. Its function was to monitor and interact with the celestial cycles, both the short-term annual cycles and the eon-spanning cycle of precession. It was a technology of resonance designed to keep the planet harmonized with the wider cosmos. The message, written in granite and alignment, says, "The Earth is a living body that responds to celestial rhythms. Here are the nodes, and here are the times to maintain its vital balance." Now, let us turn to the second message, the one written in myth, and apply the same celestial key. For centuries, we have studied these stories in isolation, as products of human psychology or primitive attempts to explain the world. But when you hold them up against the backdrop of the celestial cycles, they snap into focus as a brilliant allegorical operating system. The universal story of the hero, the god or goddess who is born in darkness, struggles against the forces of chaos, dies, and is resurrected in glory, is a direct dramatization of the sun's annual journey through the solstices and equinoxes. Osiris in Egypt, Christ in the Middle East, Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerica. The details change, but the cosmic pattern remains the same. These myths were not just stories. They were a form of spiritual technology that allowed entire cultures to internalize and participate in the great solar drama, reinforcing the connection between their own lives and the life of the cosmos. But the precession of the equinoxes provides the most stunning correlation. As the vernal equinox sun moved from one zodiacal house to the next, the central mythologies and religious symbols of entire civilizations changed in sync. The end of the age of Taurus, the bull, and the dawn of the age of Aries, the ram, around 2000 BC, is marked in our myths. We see the biblical story of Moses descending from the mountain with the 10 Commandments, representing the new laws of the age of the ram, only to find his people worshiping a golden calf, a symbol of the dying Taurian age. 2 millennia later, as the age of Aries gave way to the age of Pisces, the fish, a new teacher emerged, Jesus of Nazareth, who chose fishermen as his apostles and was known as the Fisher of Men. The symbol of the fish became the secret sign of early Christianity. These are not coincidences. This is the celestial clock, the great year, being marked in the mythological and religious software of humanity. The myths are telling us what time it is. Furthermore, they serve as the library for the cosmic warnings. The tales of great floods, of fire from the sky, of ages of darkness and chaos, are often linked to the appearance of comets or other celestial omens. These stories are the cultural memory of past catastrophes, a record of what happened on Earth the last time the celestial timetable brought about a period of instability. The second message, encoded in our oldest stories, is therefore a user's manual for the great year. It provides a narrative framework for vast stretches of time and serves as a vital historical archive of cosmic warnings and their terrestrial consequences. And so we arrive at the unified thesis. The stones and the myths, the hardware and the software, were created in response to the celestial data stream. The first and second messages are a direct answer to the third. Our ancestors, through meticulous multi-generational observation, concluded that the Earth was a participant in a cosmic conversation. They saw that celestial events, both predictable cycles and unpredictable disruptions, acted as triggers for profound changes on our planet, changes in climate, in geology, and even in human consciousness. Their entire civilization was a response to this realization. They were not trying to conquer nature. They were trying to live in harmony with it. They were not worshiping the stars. They were reading the cosmic blueprint to understand the Earth's own coming transformations. And this is the ultimate warning embedded in their work. The great year of 26,000 years is not a smooth, uniform circle. It is a cycle of ages, some of which are stable and peaceful, and some of which are marked by cataclysm and upheaval. The messages they left for us, in the alignments of their silent stone sentinels and the allegories of their enduring myths, are a map through this cycle. They are a warning system, designed to alert future generations to alert us when the celestial clock is approaching another period of profound change. They are telling us that the Earth is about to respond to a cosmic trigger. The three lost messages are, in fact, one message, a desperate plea across the millennia that says, look up at the sky to know what time it is, look down at the Earth to see where to anchor the energy, and look within your oldest stories to remember what to do when the great changes come. The warning is not that something is coming from the sky to destroy us. The warning is that the Earth itself is about to react to the sky, and we have forgotten the science of how to ride out the storm. A thesis so profound, a worldview so all-encompassing, could not exist in a vacuum. It would not be a mere footnote in the history of a culture. It would be the very heart of it, the engine that drove every aspect of its civilization. To truly grasp the power of this lost science, we must now shift our focus from the what to the so what. If a society truly believed its primary function was to act as the conscious stewards of a living planet in constant dialogue with the cosmos, how would that belief manifest? It would create a civilization fundamentally different from our own, a society built not on principles of consumption and expansion, but on principles of balance, resonance, and cosmic responsibility. This is the climax of our investigation, understanding how this celestial terrestrial technology sculpted the very soul of ancient societies, from the throne of the king to the daily life of the common farmer, and how its eventual loss plunged the world into a great amnesia from which we are only now beginning to awaken. This was not a religion as we know it. It was an applied planetary science, and its impact was total. First, let's consider the structure of power. In a civilization like this, who would rule? The strongest warrior? The richest merchant? No. Power, absolute and unquestioned, would belong to those who could read the celestial clock. The rulers would be an elite class of astronomer priests, shaman scientists who had dedicated their lives to understanding the subtle language of the cosmos and the Earth. Their authority would not be derived from force, but from a sacred and vital knowledge. They were the technicians of the planet's most critical infrastructure. Just as our modern world depends on a handful of engineers who understand how our power grids and communication networks function, their world depended entirely on this priestly class to maintain the cosmic grid. They were the ones who knew when to conduct the rituals at the great stone circles, who understood which celestial alignments heralded periods of stability or chaos, and who could interpret the omens of comets and supernova. The king or pharaoh was the chief executive of this sacred science. He was not a mere political leader. He was the living conduit between the heavens and the earth, the human lightning rod responsible for grounding the cosmic order into the human realm. The Egyptian concept of Mat, which translates to order, justice, and cosmic balance, was the pharaoh's primary responsibility. His entire reign was judged on his ability to maintain Mata. A failure to do so, a breakdown in the celestial rituals, would not just lead to social unrest. It was believed it would lead to planetary chaos, the failure of the Nile's flood, drought, and famine. Power was not the goal. It was the immense burden of cosmic maintenance. This cosmic principle would then cascade down into the very structure of society itself. Life for everyone would be organized not by economic quarters or political elections, but by the great turning of the celestial wheels. The major festivals of the year would be aligned with the solstices and equinoxes, moments for the entire population to participate in the grand project of planetary harmonization. Agriculture, the foundation of their existence, would be timed to perfection not just with the seasons, but with the lunar and even planetary cycles, which were believed to influence the fertility of the soil and the vitality of the crops. But the most profound impact would be on the very purpose of human existence. In our modern worldview, humanity is often seen as an accident of evolution on a dead rock, free to impose its will upon nature. In their worldview, humanity had a specific and crucial function within the planetary organism. We were, in essence, the nervous system of Gaia. We were the part of the Earth that had evolved the capacity for self-awareness, the part that could consciously observe the cosmos, interpret its patterns, and take deliberate action to maintain the planet's equilibrium. This imbues human life with a profound sense of purpose. The great work was not building empires or accumulating wealth. It was the collective spiritual and scientific task of keeping the planet healthy and in tune with the universe. Society was a cosmic mirror. The goal was to create a human order that was a perfect reflection of the divine celestial order. Social harmony, justice, and collective responsibility were not just ethical ideals. They were prerequisites for planetary stability. In this context, religion and science were not opposing forces. They were one and the same. The great pantheons of gods and goddesses were not merely characters in fanciful stories. They were the personified principles of the cosmos. The sun god, Re or Helios, was not just a deity to be worshipped. He was the name given to the physical and metaphysical principle of solar energy and consciousness. The moon deity, Thoth or Sin, was the principle of measurement, cycles, and the reflection of light. The earth goddess, Gaia or Pachamama, was the embodiment of the planet's own living intelligence. The great temples, therefore, were not just places of worship. They were scientific laboratories and power plants of the spirit. They were built with incredible mathematical precision, using principles of sacred geometry to create spaces that resonated with specific cosmic frequencies. The rituals performed within them, the chanting, the music, the incense, the precise alignments with celestial bodies, were not empty superstitions. They were the practical application of their science, a spiritual technology designed to tune the consciousness of the participants, amplify their collective intent, and focus it like a laser beam, directing that energy into the great work of planetary balance. It was a symbiotic relationship. The people served the gods, the cosmic forces, and the gods, in turn, maintained the order of the world. If this system was so complete, so vital, so central to their existence, we must ask the climactic question: what happened to it? How could a science of such monumental importance simply vanish from history? The answer, we believe, is written in the very myths that served as its operating manual. The system was lost in the last great cosmic warning. It was designed to predict and mitigate. The myths of a golden age followed by a catastrophic fall, of a great flood, of fire from the sky, of a pole shift, these are not just allegories. They are the fragmented, traumatized memories of a genuine global cataclysm, likely triggered by a celestial event like a comet impact or a devastating solar outburst around the end of the last ice age. A catastrophe of this magnitude would have shattered their global civilization. The delicate network of astronomer priests would have been broken, the lines of knowledge transmission severed. In the desperate centuries that followed, in the age of darkness and rebuilding, the why behind the science was lost. The rituals continued, but without their true technical understanding, they devolved into what we now call religion and superstition. The great megalithic sites were still revered, but their function as instruments was forgotten. They became the enigmatic tombs of forgotten gods. The myths were still told, but their astronomical and physical data was buried under layers of allegory and morality. The hardware of the stones remained, but the software of the knowledge was corrupted and lost. We are the descendants of the survivors of this great forgetting. We have inherited a planetary system of silent, mysterious stone sentinels and a library of myths whose true meaning eludes us. The legacy of this lost science is a profound cultural amnesia, a feeling that we are a species with a forgotten past, haunted by the ghost of a wisdom we once possessed. The impact of this worldview was the creation of a civilization in harmony with the cosmos. Its legacy is the great enigma we are faced with today, the challenge of piecing together the broken fragments of our cosmic inheritance before the clock of the great year brings us to the next cosmic warning. We have traveled from the silent, windswept plains of the megalith builders to the farthest reaches of the celestial sphere. We have journeyed through the inner landscapes of myth and the outer landscapes of cosmic time. We began this investigation with a simple, almost fanciful question. What if our planet is a living, conscious entity that is trying to send us a message? We pursued 3 lines of inquiry, 3 lost messages, believing them to be fragments of a forgotten whole. Now, at the end of our journey, we can see the picture they form. It is a picture more staggering and more relevant to our present moment than we could have ever imagined. Let us, for one final time, lay out the findings of our case. We first stepped into the mind of our ancient ancestors, discovering not a primitive, superstitious consciousness, but a deeply integrated and holistic one, born from a visceral, existential connection to a living Earth. We understood that their entire worldview was a technology for survival, driven by a profound need to maintain balance with the world that sustained them. From there, we looked up at the sky they saw, a sky teeming with information, and we identified the celestial clues they followed, the steady, life-giving rhythms of the sun and moon, the sudden, terrifying warnings of comets and meteors, and the vast, slow, civilization-spanning master clock of the great year, the precession of the equinoxes. Then came the moment of revelation. We brought the sky back down to Earth and saw with stunning clarity that the two were intrinsically linked. Their greatest works, the message in stone and the message in myth, were the product of this union. We understood that the global grid of megalithic sites was a form of planetary hardware, a resonant technology designed to receive and ground celestial energies to maintain the Earth's stability. We deciphered their myths and found not childish stories, but a sophisticated cultural software, an operating system for humanity that encoded the great cycles of cosmic time and held the memory of past cataclysms. And finally, we saw the ghost of the civilization this knowledge built, a society whose power structures, social order, and spiritual life were all dedicated to a single sacred purpose, the great work of acting as conscious stewards for a living planet. We saw how this profound wisdom was shattered in a past cataclysm, devolving from an applied science into the fragmented whispers of religion and folklore. This is what the evidence shows. This is the story that the stones and stars are telling. But this investigation was never just about the past. It is, and has always been, about the present. What does it mean to us now to uncover this ghost of a lost worldview? It means holding up a mirror to our own civilization, and what we see in the reflection is profoundly disturbing. The great forgetting has defined our modern world. We are the children of that amnesia. We have built a civilization on the opposite principle, not of balance, but of conquest, not of stewardship, but of exploitation. We have declared the earth to be a dead thing, a warehouse of resources to be endlessly consumed. We have silenced its voice with the roar of our engines and blinded ourselves to the celestial cycles with the glare of our artificial lights. We have become a species deaf and blind to the very systems that give us life. And now, we find ourselves surrounded by the consequences of that profound disconnection. We talk of climate change, of mass extinction, of ecological collapse, as if these are technical problems to be solved with technical solutions. But what if they are not? What if, viewed through the lens of our investigation, these crises are the very symptoms the ancients feared? What if they are the predictable, inevitable response of a living planetary system being pushed violently out of balance? What if the cosmic warning is not something that will come from the sky in the future, but is something that is happening all around us right now? The earth is speaking. It is speaking in the language of fire, of flood, of feverish temperatures, and of vanishing life. It is sending us a message, and we have forgotten how to listen. The ultimate irony is that our own cutting-edge science is slowly, painstakingly, beginning to rediscover the core tenets of this ancient wisdom. Our ecologists and Earth system scientists speak of the planet as a single, self-regulating system, giving a new name, Gaia, to an ancient truth. Our quantum physicists speak of a universe that is fundamentally interconnected, where all things are entangled in a web of relationships, echoing the animistic worldview of our ancestors. We are, through our most advanced and complex methods, arriving at the same conclusion they reached through millennia of pure, direct observation. We are scientifically proving the mythologies to be functional truths. We stand at a critical turning point in history. We have more power and more information than any generation before us. Yet we are more adrift, more disconnected from our cosmic and terrestrial context than ever. The rediscovery of this lost science is not an academic exercise. It is a lifeline. It offers us a new story, or rather, a very old story, about who we are and what our purpose is. It suggests that the solution to our global crisis is not just a technological fix, but a perceptual shift, a revolution in consciousness. What then is our final message to you? It is that the three lost messages are not truly lost. They are dormant. The message in stone still stands in the silent sentinels of granite that dot our landscapes, waiting for us to remember their purpose. The message in myth still lives in our oldest stories, in our deepest archetypes, waiting for us to remember how to read them as the cosmic manuals they are. And the message in the stars still shines down on us every single night, the great clock still turning, the cycle still unfolding, waiting for us to simply look up and remember. The Haranka das Estrelas, the legacy of the stars, is not something we have to find. It is something we have to remember. It is in our blood, in our bones, and in the very fabric of our consciousness. The investigation we began together does not end here. It is handed over to you. The great work of our time is to end the great forgetting. It is to learn to listen again, to see the world not as a dead object, but as a living presence, to understand that our survival is not predicated on our mastery over nature, but on our harmony within it, to become, once again, the conscious stewards of a living, breathing, and deeply sacred earth. The journey of the cosmic detective is over. The journey of the planetary steward has just begun.